Welcome to part 7 of the Ham Radio Technician License Exam Study video. This one is going to be a real humdinger because there's mostly memorization to this. So let's go ahead and get started. Which term describes the ability of a receiver to detect the presence of a signal? Signal and sensitivity, think of those signal and sensitivity together for that one to remember the answer. What is a transceiver? A device that combines a receiver and transmitter. So you get the last part, or first part of the last word, transceiver. Number 3, which of the following is used to convert a signal from one frequency to another? And that is a mixer. So the mixer mixes the two and changes the frequencies. Which term describes the ability of a receiver to discriminate between multiple signals? And that is called selectivity. So think of it like selecting one signal out of multiple. What is the name of a circuit that generates a signal at a specific frequency? This is called an oscillator. So it oscillates. Question 6. What device converts the RF input and output of a transceiver to another band? And that is called a transverter. Now I'm really sorry there's not many visuals for this. They're just things that you have to memorize. What is the function of a transceiver's PTT input? And switches transceiver from receive to transmit when grounded. So on your radios, some that have a PTT input, you can plug in a switch to that so that you can use that switch to transmit. And PTT stands for push to talk. Which of the following describes combining speech with an RF carrier signal? And that is modulation. So you modulate a signal. What is the function of the SSB CW FM switch on a VHF power amplifier? And that is to set the amplifier for proper operation in the selected mode. So SSB and CW are one, and then FM is the second one. What device increases the transmitted output power from a transceiver? And that is an RF power amplifier. Where is an RF preamplifier installed? And that is going to be between the antenna and the receiver. It's a little more complicated than that, but we're just talking about a receiver, so there's no transmitting going on. So it'll go between the antenna, and it will amplify the small signal through the antenna so that the receiver will have a greater signal. Now we're on to section B. Again, this is all just rote knowledge. You just have to memorize it. You can do some Google searches if something piques your interest, but it's going to be hard to see visually what this stuff is talking about. What can you do if you are told that your FM handheld or mobile transceiver is over-deviating? And that is to talk farther away from the microphone. What would cause a broadcast AM or FM radio to receive an amateur radio transmission unintentionally, and the receiver is unable to reject strong signals outside the AM or FM band? Which of the following can cause radio frequency interference? All these choices are correct. You could have a fundamental overload, harmonics, or spurious emissions. Which of the following could you use to cure distorted audio caused by RF current on the shield of a microphone cable? And that is a ferrite choke. So a ferrite choke is something that you can snap onto the shield of a microphone cable. You can also use that on TVs or radios or any other device. A lot of times you can connect it to the power cord, which acts like an antenna. How can fundamental overload of a non-amateur radio, TV, or receiver by an amateur signal be reduced or eliminated? Block the ammeter signal with a filter at the antenna input of the affected receiver. So back when TVs used antennas, you could do that. I'm not quite sure how modern that question is compared to today's technology. It's not going to affect your YouTube, that's for sure. Which of the following actions should you take if a neighbor tells you that your station's transmissions are interfering with their radio or TV reception? Make sure that your station is functioning properly and that it does not cause interference to your own radio or television when it is tuned to the same channel. When you get neighbors involved, it gets a little crazy, but you could offer to help and put a filter on either their antenna or their power cord. Which of the following can reduce overload of a VHF transceiver by a nearby commercial FM station? And that is by installing a band reject filter, aka spending a little money. Question 8. What should you do if something in the neighbor's home is causing harmful interference to your amateur station? So all these choices are correct. Work with your neighbor to identify the offending device. Politely inform your neighbor that FCC rules prohibit the use of devices that cause interference. Good luck with that. Make sure your station meets the standards of good amateur practice. When you start getting neighbors involved, you have to be somewhat diplomatic about it. Be helpful. What should be the first step to resolve non-fiber optic cable TV interference caused by your amateur radio transmission? Be sure all TV feed line coaxial connectors are installed properly. A loose connector can cause problems. What might be a problem if you receive a report that your audio signal through an FM repeater is distorted or unintelligible? Again, all these choices are correct. Your transmitter is slightly off frequency. Your batteries are running low. You are in a bad location. What is a symptom of RF feedback in a transmitter or transceiver? Reports of garbled, distorted, or unintelligible voice transmissions. What is the primary purpose of a dummy load? That is to prevent transmitting signals over the air when making tests. So a dummy load is a terrible antenna. It is just a non-inductive resistor on a heat sink, and it's used just to dissipate the power of output of your radio so that you can do tests. That's going to come up again. Which of the following is used to determine if an antenna is resonant at the desired operating frequency? And that is to use an antenna analyzer. And we live in a world where you can buy antenna analyzers of all different types and brands and models, and they are very useful to use to check antennas that you might build, which is a fun thing to do, which is part of our hobby. What does a dummy load consist of? A non-inductive resistor mounted on a heatsink. We just talked about that. There it is again. What reading on a SWR or standing wave ratio meter indicates a perfect impedance match between the antenna and the feed line? And the answer is C, a 1-to-1. You want to have an equal match, 1-to-1. Why do most solid-state transmitters reduce output power as SWR increases beyond a certain level? That is to protect the output amplifier transistors. So standing wave ratio, you have what's forward and then reflected. The stuff that's coming back could burn up those amplifier transistors. So you definitely want your radio to dial back the power. What does an SWR or standing wave ratio reading of 4-to-1 indicate? And that is an impedance mismatch. What happens to power lost in a feed line? It is converted into heat. That's loss. Which instrument can be used to determine SWR? And that would be a directional wattmeter. you can buy SWR meters, and they are just directional watt meters. That's basically what they are, is they measure the power forward and the power reflected. Which of the following causes failure of coaxial cables? That is going to be moisture contamination from these choices right here. Moisture contamination. Why should the outer jacket of coaxial cable be resistant to ultraviolet light? Ultraviolet light can damage the jacket and allow water to enter the cable. So when you go to purchase different coaxial cables, you'll see that some may not be rated for outside use. What is a disadvantage of air core coaxial cable when compared to foam or solid dielectric types? So air core requires special techniques to prevent moisture in the cable. What instrument would you use to measure electric potential? And that would be a voltmeter. And I did a little experimentation in Tinkercad just to show you. This is what a current meter, an ammeter, or a voltmeter would look like. This is a digital DVM, digital voltmeter, and it's showing 7 volts across that resistor. So I just thought I'd show you that, help you understand a little bit about what we're talking about here. How is a voltmeter connected to a component to measure applied voltage? And that is in parallel. And in this drawing, you can see that it is parallel to the resistor. It's not in series. Whereas the meter marked with the A in the dark circle, that is in series. So the current has to run through it to get to the LED and everything else that's there. When configured to measure current, how is a multimeter connected to a component? And we just saw that that is in series. Which instrument is used to measure electric current? An ammeter or ammeter. That's a hard word for me to say. I just say ammeter, but somebody's going to correct me in the comments. Which of the following can damage a multimeter? Attempting to measure voltage when using the resistance setting. I do have an experiment that I did, and it does show in Tinkercad error, and it shows the LED blowing up because it short circuits through the resistor, and infinite current. Oh, you can't see it. Infinite current flows through the LED, which blows it up. Which of the following measurements are made using a multimeter? So a multimeter is not going to do signal strength. It's not going to do impedance and reactance, but it does do voltage and resistance, and that is your answer. Which of the following types of solder should not be used for radio and electronic applications? And that is acid core solder. Acid core solder is better suited for plumbing. We use lead solder with a rosin in the center. What is the characteristic appearance of a cold tin lead solder joint? And that is a rough or lumpy surface. So I have one right here for you. The one right there in the middle is rough, lumpy, and kind of grayish looking, whereas the rest of them are nice and shiny. Nice and shiny with a pyramid shape is definitely what you want. What reading indicates that an ohmmeter is connected across a large discharged capacitor? And that is increasing resistance with time. So an ohmmeter uses voltage to measure resistance. And so a capacitor that is discharged is going to charge just a little bit. As that voltage goes up, it thinks that the resistance is increasing. Which of the following precautions should be taken when measuring in-circuit resistance with an ohmmeter? And that is to ensure that the circuit is not powered, make sure that it's not plugged in, and make sure that the capacitors are already discharged. It's a good way to get hurt. And now we are at the end of this very difficult section, And I want to take time to thank you for watching these videos and hitting that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you really want to help out, become a member for a little while. And these are my long-standing members: Toby, Michael, Brian, Dwayne, Raphael, Dale Henninger, Lansing Pugh, Josh, Kilo 4, Lemur, India, and WD4DAN, Dan. Thank you guys for your continued support. I appreciate you. Go ahead and hit the subscribe right here, or check out another video up above, because there's some more coming. Hey, y'all have a great one in 73.